Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are wading into data modeling. It's one of those topics, right? Foundational, super important.
Definitely.
But honestly, trying to learn it, it often feels like you're just drowning in jargon instead of actually, getting anywhere. I mean, if you've ever picked up a book or clicked on a tutorial about, say, structuring data pipelines, and bam, instantly hit with diagrams, normalization this, standard that.
Oh, yeah. You know the feeling.
Yeah, know exactly what we mean. Well, the source material we're looking at today, it's excerpts from a really sharp presentation. It kind of cuts through all that noise.
It does. It really confirms that feeling of, well, being overwhelmed.
Right. It points out this tension.
Yeah.
Loads of resources out there, sure, but they often just lead to total information overload. And crucially, they skip the why. Why are we even doing this?
Exactly. And that's our mission today, isn't it? We're not here to, draw schemas on a whiteboard.
No diagrams today.
No diagrams. We're digging into this critique. The sources argue pretty strongly that the traditional way of teaching this is just misaligned. It goes for encyclopedic knowledge over what actually works.
So we're pulling out those foundational questions about purpose, how it fits in an organization.
Precisely. The stuff that should come before you even think about technical standards.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the presenter in our source material really nails the first problem. They say, look, there are just many data modeling books out there.
Tons of them.
But the big issue, they almost always go for breadth. They try to cover absolutely everything.
Which sounds good, right? Comprehensive.
You'd think. But when you're learning something this complex, that breadth actually becomes the enemy.
It really does. It leads to this kind of paralysis. Think about how it's usually taught.
Yeah.
You get chapter after chapter covering as many conventions as possible, as many standards as possible, deep dives into third normal form history.
That's the normal forms.
Right. Then maybe dimensional modeling gets a chapter, maybe data vault gets a mention. All very technical, maybe historically interesting, but completely disconnected from what you actually do day to day, from the operational reality.
So the focus ends up being less on finding the right approach for your specific situation and more on just trying to memorize every single possible approach that's ever existed.
Exactly. And the result for the learner, for you listening, is just doubt, confusion.
Yeah, the source says it perfectly.
Yeah.
This approach leaving you overwhelmed. You're left thinking, okay, I think I get what 3NF is, technically.
Yeah.
But which of these things am I actually supposed to use for this project right now?
And that confusion, that failure to guide the application, that's what happens when you skip the why. What's fascinating here is the source points out that most of these traditional texts, they just sort of assume you already get the business reason for modeling.
They assume you know why you're there.
Yeah. They jump right into schema design, normalization rules, without ever stopping to explain, okay, why are we doing this in the first place? What business problem does this actually solve?
Hang on, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Because, our listener might have spent ages trying to really master these technical concepts. Isn't getting the technical stuff right, like achieving high normalization, isn't that sort of the baseline, good engineering practice? If a book is about the technical side of modeling, why should it have to teach me about my company's strategy?
That's a really fair question, and it gets right to the core of this critique. The point isn't that the standards themselves are bad or wrong.
Okay.
It's that the standards are pretty much meaningless if they aren't put into context. The source is really clear on this. It says most texts assume the reader understands where data modeling fits into the data team and the organization as a whole.
Right, they make that assumption.
But then the source immediately follows up saying this is absolutely not the case for most people, especially when they're starting out. Oh, okay. So without that context, you could build something technically perfect, like beautifully normalized, textbook perfect model.
Theoretically, yes.
The result of mastering all that breadth.
Yeah.
But if it takes forever to actually get data out of it, or if you need a whole engineering team just to run one report,
then it's failed. It's failed its real purpose.
It's a model for the textbook, not for the business user who needs an answer.
Precisely. Think about it. If you build your model based purely on, say, operational needs, very high normalization for processing transactions, your OLTP system, but the main goal for the organization is actually fast, complex reporting, the OLAP side of things, then your technically perfect model actually becomes a roadblock, an organizational liability. It's a fundamental mismatch.
So the model needs to be an asset that helps the business strategy?
Yes.
Mhm.
But if the learning materials don't even make that connection,
Uh.
then all the technical details just stay academic. They're not practical tools driving value. Here's where it gets really interesting. So the sources identify the pain point, the overwhelm, the missing why,
Yeah.
and then they pivot. They start talking about the solution, the alternative. And it's about shifting the whole perspective. Covering everything, yes, but in a practical approach, starting with the why.
That flip is key.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
It really does. It reframes the whole reason you learn data modeling. It's not just about knowing historical standards anymore.
Right.
It becomes about understanding it as a strategic business function. So this practical approach, it starts by defining what data modeling is, not just abstractly, but as a tool for today's data world.
And crucially,
Where it fits in the organization in today's world. And that context today, it's all about consumption, speed, getting insights.
and that link to actual measurable value for the organization that's made really explicit in the source material. It analyzes the benefits by asking, okay, how does this help not just the team, but the organization as a whole?
Exactly. Which, by the way, changes the skills you need. You're not just an engineer focusing on tables and keys anymore.
You're more like a facilitator.
A facilitator of business insight, yeah. The conversation shifts away from just data integrity and isolation and towards real business benefits. Things like agility, self-service analytics, and the source points to the ultimate goal, using data modeling for doing analytics and specifically empowering our business users.
Let's dig into that word empowering. What does that actually look like? When we say a why-driven model empowers business users, what does that mean day to day?
Well, it means moving away from those old frustrations. It's making sure the data is reliable. Yes, absolutely. That's table stakes.
But more than that.
But maybe even more importantly, making sure it's accessible and understandable to someone who, doesn't live and breathe SQL or entity relationship diagrams.
Right, someone who isn't a data specialist.
That's the key difference. A model that's truly aligned with the organization puts that end user experience first. Often, this might mean moving towards something like dimensional modeling.
Which is a standard.
Which is a standard, yes. But you're choosing it because it's optimized for reading, it's intuitive, it's built for those fast, complex analytical queries people need to run.
So empowerment means less friction. Faster reports, dashboards that actually load.
Yes. And maybe fewer arguments about whose numbers are right because the definitions are baked into the model itself. Standardized.
So it takes that messy, raw data and turns it into something reliable, almost like a self-service BI environment that people can actually trust and use.
That's the goal, instead of the data team being this constant bottleneck.
Yeah, where every little question needs a custom query against some super complex structure.
Right. Instead, the model itself lets the finance person or the marketing analyst or whoever confidently pull accurate data themselves.
Okay. So the success metric changes completely.
It has to. It's no longer, is this model perfectly in third normal form?
It's more like,
it's how much faster are our business users getting the insights they need to make good decisions? That's the radical shift the source material is really pushing for.
the value is measured in less organizational drag, faster insights.
Exactly. Modeling becomes a way to accelerate strategy, not just, maintain technical tidiness.
So if we kind of boil this all down, we're back to that question the source itself asks, why should we care about this? And the answer seems to be a massive shift away from that panic of trying to master every single standard ever invented, the what.
Right, the breath trap.
And moving towards this laser focus on organizational value, on the why.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the real takeaway, the knowledge nugget here is pretty clear. Effective data modeling isn't about being an encyclopedia of conventions.
It's not about collecting them all.
No. It's about fundamentally understanding its crucial role in hitting organizational goals, in enabling analytics for the whole business. And you absolutely have to start by defining that value, that specific, maybe even quantifiable why, before you even think about picking a standard or drawing a single line on a diagram.
So what does this all mean? Well, today, using our sources, we've really tried to pivot how we think about data modeling. We've moved past that overwhelming, academic approach, all the conventions, the abstract standards.
The breadth.
Yeah, the breadth. And we've landed squarely on this essential question of, Does it fit the organization? Does it actually empower users? That knowledge that's so often just assumed the why that gives the whole thing context that turns out to be the most critical piece to grasp first.
It changes everything. What you prioritize, how you even measure if you're doing a good job.
Right.
And maybe here's a final thought, something for you to chew on that comes straight from the implications of this source material. If the #1 goal of data modeling is empowering those business users, speeding up analytics, driving strategy, okay, how radically different would your data modeling approach look if you measured success only by how fast and reliably it served the organization as a whole, not by how well it followed some historical technical rulebook? Between maybe technical purity and actual organizational utility. That's where the real value lies in the modern data landscape.
Apply that lens, that why lens, to your next knowledge challenge. You might find things get a lot clearer, much faster. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.